Joining me now for a closer look at that market action is Rekopantsoe Nare from Anchor Capital. Reko, thank you for your time and a good afternoon.
Hi, Nolutando. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be on the show. Hello to your viewers.
Looks like we're heading towards a bit of a bleak ending to the week. Let's talk about what markets have maybe had to battle, and I'll say battle because it feels like a battle, this week and where we are today.
Yeah, Nolutando, I think the general market sentiment, whether local, offshore, a bit of a risk-off sentiment that you're seeing begin to grip markets. As you said in the intro, a difficult day on the JSC so far, only halfway through the day, so you don't know if we could get some recovery. But so far, if you look at the all-share index, if you look at the top 40, all down as worse as 1% at the worst of today, but currently down about 0.8%. This morning, resources. As you already highlighted, the worst impacted in today's trading session, down about 1.8%, and then the rand significantly weaker by about 50 basis points. Weakening to about 18 rand 34 cents to the dollar, and that was after we saw the rand strengthen to about 18 rand 16 cents post yesterday's SARB interest rate announcement. I think right at the intro, you did highlight, if you think of offshore markets, you did highlight that, you've got, on one part, you've got earnings season that's already started, and that's already beginning to highlight, maybe just some growing concerns around the consumer and around, labor market softness. You've got the reserves that came from this COVID stimulus beginning to kind of lose a bit of steam and beginning to get depleted. You're seeing that being reported by companies. And then, of course, you've got the all-important big talking point of today, which will be that global IT issue/technical outage that's been affecting banks and the US banks. That's been affecting US airlines and been affecting financial services. So yeah, I think a lot for investors to have to grapple with as they close off their trading week this week.
I want to speak about the rand, what could have happened there, because like you said yesterday, after we held our rates steady there, the rand seemed to strengthen a little bit. It hasn't been long, but we've seen a weakening. Is that got to do maybe with what's happening in the US more than what might emerge from here at home?
Yeah, so I think it's always a good point to make there, Nolutando, that, there's always that one part rand weakness, other part US dollar strength. But as you highlighted, we've seen the rand initially trade stronger by about 0.2%. But maybe one thing to highlight about that announcement in itself, that announcement largely coming in as far as rates are concerned within South Africa, that announcement largely coming in line with expectation. I think the market expectation was that the SARB would keep rates on a hold. I think the one thing that was encouraging, if you look at that announcement, was that the fact that, you did have six members voting, and of the six, four were in favor of keeping the repo rate at 8.25, and then you had two in favor of cutting. So yeah, I think, of course, that continues, the SARB continues to be what keeps kind of the rand resilient. But with that said, I think the expectation that we will start to see rates come lower, beginning to get a bit of momentum. But I think from our side, we continue, if you think of the rate outlook, we continue to just caution the fact that, it's most likely that you'll see the South African Reserve Bank take step in line with the US Fed. So what we're trying to say by that is we're trying to say that, it's likely that we'll start to see the Fed cut first before we see the Reserve Bank take action.
With that said, when we think of what might emerge from the US, I think this week we saw markets trying to really price themselves again into a September rate cut. We've been here before, we've been burnt before, but of course we continue in this direction. Are you expecting a September rate cut?
Look, from our side, our expectation is not to expect a September rate cut. I know that the market is as much as likely. So we've got 90% expectation for a September rate cut. I think it's more likely that we'll see a rate cut in November. But with that said, if you think of the things or the case to be made, whether September or November, the case to be made to see rates come lower, you obviously last week you had US inflation falling, for a second second consecutive month in June, and you're seeing that downward inflation trend beginning to resume, and that's after it stalled in March and April. You've had 3 years of elevated shelter inflation, which has obviously been a key driver of inflation within the US, and you're seeing that shelter inflation begin to kind of moderate to a more comfortable level. So there's a lot to be said for the US Fed cutting in whether September or November. But with that said, I think the expectation of how deep the cutting cycle is going to be then begins to, rack investors' minds going forward.
It's been a quiet week in terms of company news coming out of at least the local market share. But the big one, I think, was certainly Anglo's. Keen to get your thoughts on this one, what you make of it. Of course, Anglo's quite a big operation there. It looks like they're keeping most of their guidance the same. But I think there's also some talks of them writing down some of their businesses there. So more impairments might still have to move through those financials. And I'm just keen to understand how markets might be taking stock of the state of Anglo's at this time.
Yeah, so I think, even when you look at the miners, by and large, it's maybe a kind of big statement to make around the miners as a whole within the JSC. It's been a difficult year or two to be a miner, just given, if you think of just like where commodity prices sit, if you think of where Chinese demand and really the outlook on Chinese stimulus and the Chinese property market, which has largely been, a key driver as far as Chinese demand is concerned, has been a key driver of what keeps our miners afloat. So I think, from Anglo's side, of course, you've had also the BHP acquisition, that run in, which wasn't less than sort of a month ago. But yeah, I think, going forward, it is a strong management team. Going forward, I think investors will continue to wait to see that bounce in commodity prices before kind of stepping forward. But until then, you've got a management team like Anglo beginning to, trying to really just unlock value for shareholders as far as unbundling, as far as the selling of De Beers, the diamond business, just beginning to try and clean up their portfolio as a whole in order to unlock value for shareholders.
Of course, our resources counters have also just been kind of waiting steady for a more ideal Chinese picture to emerge. What we are hearing now is, I guess, as this US presidential race takes form here, is the fact that, trade relations between the US and China could still get more hostile. Can you believe it? And that actually might not be great for us here at home who really do export, and our resources specifically that try to export to China. Then I'm just wondering also, have we even begun the pricing that in? Or are we kind of sitting back waiting to see what happens with this US election before we understand how that might affect our relationship with trading partners such as China?
Look, Tando, I think, it's still a very, very early in the race. November, you still got quite a bit to go. I think if you think of, the last information that we got as far as the US presidential election is concerned, I guess you've got about 19% of voters, which are called the double haters. In other words, they don't quite enjoy Donald Trump, nor would they vote for Joe Biden. And I think it's in those swing states, if you will, or within that sort of category, that the race will be won. So I think from our side, when we look forward as a kind of a long-term investor, you need to kind of see through the noise. Yes, there will be a likelihood of some impact. If you think from a fiscal point of view, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, whoever does end up winning, it will have an impact as far as the US fiscal outlook is concerned. And of course, as you've highlighted, you've got sort of the kind of geopolitical tensions that investors are already grappling with. If you think of the things that are going on within the Middle East, if you think of Russia and Ukraine, that continues to carry on. But I think for investors, it's really a case of just kind of seeing through the storm, seeing how does this weigh. But oftentimes, you've got to just, put your head down and just kind of work with the information that sits in front of you. So I think that's what investors are currently weighing at the present moment in time.
And before we wrap, Reko, let's get your stock pick for this afternoon.
Yeah, no, Tando. So I think from my side, what I'd like to kind of put forward as my stock pick, given the SA Inc. Euphoria that's been playing through over the last sort of 3 weeks or since sort of post-elections. I will go for Pick n Pay as my stock pick, a recovery within a recovery, if you will. If you're trying to kind of consider what the turnaround strategy that Sean Summers and his team are trying to achieve. We think that that two-step recapitalization plan, we kind of think quite constructively of it. They're looking to just raise sufficient liquidity to reduce long-term debt. In order to do that, of course, they're looking towards a rights issue, and we've got details around that rights issue already. And then, of course, you've got the listing of that box of business. So, yeah, I think for investors that are looking to really play a recovery within a recovery and also to play kind of an SA retailer, I think Pick n Pay is a good place to see some value unlock.
Brilliant, Reko. Thank you for wrapping the week up for us here on Business Lunch. Have a fantastic weekend. That was your midday markets update with Anchor Capital's Rekopantsoe Nare.